Good morning, everyone. I will try to keep my remarks brief because I agree that with the quality of the participants we have here, we want to get into the conversation and not have so many talking heads up in the front. Tilman mentioned, first of all, I want to thank our partners at German Watch and from Mercator Foundation, this is a really wonderful opportunity for us, and I know Shefali has really valued the opportunity of working with the steering group and getting to know all of you in the process of helping organize this meeting. Tilman mentioned Hurricane Sandy, and I come from the United States. Over the last several days, this storm had some very damaging effects in several Caribbean nations and more recently in the US. And I have many friends in New York City. So when I arrived here yesterday afternoon, as soon as I checked in, I wanted to see what was going on and see how people were. And I went up to my room and switched on CNN. And the story that they had was a happy story about the fact that despite the severe damage and the number of lives that had been lost from the hurricane, Wall Street was not damaged. And the New York Stock Exchange would be reopening for business on time Wednesday morning. And I saw that and I thought, this is why we're here in Bonn today. This is why we're here. Because as long as this is where the priorities are of those in power around the world, the priority is Wall Street, we will have to get used to more and more hurricanes. And they may survive them, but we will not. So I'm really glad that we're here together. Energy, agriculture, and finance are actually following very similar paths today around the world toward production and consumption that is global in scale, toward highly concentrated, if not monopoly, control, and toward tightly connected, complex systems that appear to be quite sophisticated, but are in fact highly vulnerable to catastrophic failure. Because while their creators tell us that these systems are extremely efficient, they are really efficient at extracting profit and not much else. IATP, my organization, got involved in this work around climate and agriculture sometime before Copenhagen, when we were seeing some of the proposals that were being made in the United Nations and in the private sector and beginning to be floated by some governments. And when we talked with climate activists about the implications of some of these proposals in relation to agriculture and in relation to land use change, we found that many of the activists, especially from the north, they had a sense of urgency about reducing emissions and getting a global deal made that made it very difficult for them to hear the concerns of farmers and peasants. At the same time, few people who were working on the right to food or working on more just international agricultural policies actually understood the implications of these climate and land use change debates for their work. So as agribusiness and finance interests and northern governments put forward their proposals for agricultural carbon offset markets and for so-called climate smart agriculture, it was very difficult to generate strong and unified resistance, much less unite behind positive alternatives, in part because of the disconnections and the lack of engagement on the civil society side between energy and agriculture and between North and South. So for us, this conference is a very exciting opportunity. It's an opportunity to bring these communities together and discuss collectively areas of synergies that can strengthen our work, and to do that on the basis of a shared commitment to universal rights to access to energy and the right to food. For instance, the issue of land grabs is a major crisis worldwide. It's been described by the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food as an existential threat to the world's peasants. But it's not just about farmland. It's also about what's under the soil and access to coal to oil and to gas. And herein lies a natural bridge between the climate struggles and the struggles of rural people. So as we fight to keep the coal in the hole and keep the oil in the soil, how can we come together to ensure that we create coherent policies at the international, regional, and national levels to ensure that land use respects both ecological limits and human rights? And how can we use that as a basis for building stronger models for food and energy sovereignty? Another common challenge, which Tillman mentioned, is the tremendous concentration of corporate power in both the energy and agriculture sectors. As long as this economic and political power remains unchallenged, the great transition that we're here talking about will never be able to take place. How can those monopolies be broken up? How can the bankers be brought to heel? And conversely, how can we join hands at different levels to bring about a resurgence of more democratic and decentralized forms of production, such as food and energy cooperatives? In the next 2 days, we'll be discussing these critical areas of common challenges and synergies in small working groups. Your collective engagement in the working groups and the plenary sessions will allow us to get much deeper into these complex issues. And in the end, I hope we will come out with a few key ideas where civil society organizations can take collective action and move forward. We'll also have opportunities to learn about promising initiatives that are already underway, both in our working groups and in a best practices session later today, with examples that range from community-based successes on food and energy, to national-level campaigns on feed-in tariffs, to statewide adoption of agricultural extension programs. Many of the best examples are at the local or the subnational level. And scale is a final challenge that I hope we can grapple with in the next couple of days. In order to be ecologically and socially sustainable, agriculture and energy solutions need to operate at appropriate scales, tailored to specific local circumstances. What are the higher level governance structures that can enable a transition that is both diverse and local to flourish? And how can we as a movement work effectively at different scales so that local and national campaigns and groups, north and south, can much more effectively learn from each other, support each other, and join forces for global impact? These are not easy questions to answer, but I think they're the right ones to ask over the next couple of days. And we're very fortunate to have been able to invite you, a rich, diverse, innovative, and passionate set of people from all over the world, Africa, Brazil, India, around Europe, and the US, to have you here at the table for this conversation. In a few minutes, Dirk Kulverscheit, a brilliant facilitator who I have the pleasure of knowing for many years, will talk more about the process that we'll use to try to make sure that we have productive outcomes. But first, Vera Lehman from the Mercator Foundation will say a few words. So I hand it over to you. Thank you.